Coming up this Saturday, the UFC's making their debut at the Meta Apex with a main event of Mario Bautista taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Oliveira undefeated in the UFC, coming off of wins against Kyler Phillips, Said Nurmagomedov, Ricky Simone, some very respectable names in the bantamweight division, and Mario Bautista coming off the loss to Umar Nurmagomedov, looking to bounce back in a big way. Co-main event, we got Albazi coming back after a layoff and his first UFC loss at a career worst performance. Kyoji Horguchi, second stint in the UFC, comes in and runs through Tagir Ulanbekov. With a win here, he might be in the title picture of the flyweight division. And Rizvan Kuniev coming off his first UFC fight, which was a very close decision against Curtis Blades. I think he arguably won. And Jailton Almeida in a very similar position. A controversial decision lost to Alexander Volkov his last time out. He's stepping in on short notice, trying to make a way to get himself back into that title picture in the heavyweight division. I can't wait to go through this card with you guys. I think it's a solid card. I like the Apex cards because some people sleep on them. And usually when people are sleeping, that's when you can make some money. We got some good matchups as well. I'm going to go through all the fights. I'm going to give you my early breakdown, my early lean on who I think is going to win. But this is before I dive into all the tape, before I check off all the boxes, go through the statistics, and before I can come to a real conclusion. So just keep that in mind. But this is a good way to talk it through, and you can get where my head is at based on what we know about each of the fighters in the matchup. Like the video for me. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We're on the road to 30,000 subscribers. And it costs you absolutely nothing to hit that subscription button. I'm putting out hours of content for you guys on here on YouTube every single week. It would mean the world to me. Please go ahead and hit that subscription button. We're trying to get to 30K. Without any further ado, let's hop into the fights. Priscilla Cachoeira coming in as a plus 100 underdog, taking on Claudia Sygula, sitting at minus 120. I told you there's some good matchups on this card, and this is a good matchup. I like this matchup. I know it's women's MMA. People like to shit on it, but it's a decent little fight here. It's a decent little scrap. Priscilla Cachoeira was known as the zombie girl, for one, but she's known as a girl that's going to take a ton of damage, and she's going to try to inflict more damage or knock you out before, you either take her down and sub her or before that final bell. She's going to go in there and she's going to create a war. But she's coming off the first KO loss of her career. Jocelyn Edwards slept her in round one. Not a good look. This is a girl that was fighting at 125 for most of her career, and then she moved up to 135, had a little bit of success, not much, and then finally takes her first KO loss. So maybe these girls at bantamweight might be too heavy of hitters for her to take that type of damage. So that's a big question mark coming into this matchup. But she does have a lot more UFC experience than Claudia Sygula. I never thought I'd ever see the day where Claudia Sygula is a favorite in a UFC fight, but she is coming off a win where she looked pretty good against Irina Alekseeva. But is Alekseeva good? No. She is 27. She could still be improving. She's one of these Polish girls that comes over to America, trains an American top team, so I think she's getting some good training. She's obviously the much better looking one in this fight, but that doesn't help you win fights. But it could be a little bit, you could make some conclusions. Oh, she's just a pretty girl. She can't fight. Always take the uglier one, the Brazilian lesbian one, to win a fight. But I think this could be competitive. On the feet, I think Sygula's a bit faster, but I don't know that she really carries any, real pop that's going to make Priscilla Cachoeira go to the ground. Could say the same thing with Jocelyn Edwards, but I feel like Jocelyn Edwards does have a little bit more pop, even though she's mostly a decision fighter. It should be interesting. I think Sygula can out-volume Cachoeira on the feet, but in that smaller cage at the Apex, if she's getting the cage cut off, Cachoeira could catch her with some bombs. I'm interested to see if Sygula goes to any type of grappling here. I don't think her grappling's good. We saw it in her UFC debut. She got taken down by Melissa Mullins and absolutely rinsed on the mat. So I'd be shocked if Sygula is some great offensive grappler. But I don't know that you really need to be. I'm going to side with Priscilla Cachoeira here. Actually, no. On my early lean, I got to go with the younger girl. I got to go with the younger girl because Cachoeira's chin might just be that bad. And it's not like she's some amazing striker. She's just dangerous. I think Sygula might be the better, technical striker. And she could be making a lot of improvements since she's come over to America and been training at an American top team. Now, obviously, I told you, these are early leans, early predictions. So when I'm going into this, I'm like, yeah, I mean, just thinking of Sygula as a favorite in the UFC kind of is like wild to me. But it is a matchup where she's not really going to get taken down by Cachoeira. She's probably going to be stand up and striking with her. Cachoeira wears a lot of damage. She takes a lot of shots. If she can avoid getting KO'd, I feel like she might be able to win on the scorecards here. So I am going to lead towards Sygula for the early lean. Moving on. Bantamweight bout here. We got Muin Gafurov taking on Jacob Wiklacz. Wiklacz coming in at -116. Gafurov -104. Very competitively lined matchup again. Gafurov coming in here 2-2 in the UFC. But he is coming off a big underdog cash against Renya Nakamura. Now, that fight was over a year ago now. He did have a fight scheduled. I think it was against Miles Johns. And that fight got canceled. So he hasn't fought in a year, but he's 29, coming off a big win against a very touted prospect. Was the game plan from Nakamura very good? No, it was pretty bad. But I think Gafurov has a style that kind of lulls these wrestlers into not wrestling him because he does have some pretty solid takedown defense. And in his UFC debut, he took it on short notice, and that's where he kind of did get wrestled up. But he's got power in his hands. He's one of these Tajikistan guys who he's kind of like a Naimov. Like he's not really going to go out there and pull out big wrestling techniques. He's not going to go out there and just try to wet blanket you, but he's a decent enough striker with some power, and he's physical in that clinch. He's physical on the ground. Wiklacz, on the other hand, as you can tell by the way he wins fights, not a striker. Not a striker. 0-2 to the KO, 10-1 to the submission, though. Coming off a UFC debut win against Patchy Mix, which was impressive. It is impressive because he didn't completely win the fight on the feet. He did have a lot of success in the grappling, but it was a close competitive fight. I honestly did think Patchy Mix lost when I was watching it, even though I had Patchy Mix at a parlay, which is honestly just laughable at this point. The guy got cut. But Jacob Wiklacz, he's 29 years of age. He's a good grappler. He's a very good grappler. He does kind of remind you of like the Polish RDR. I know that's getting thrown around there. I didn't create it. But he does kind of remind you of that because he's very awkward on the feet, but he's kind of just a physical, awkward striker, falls into grappling situations where he kind of wins them. He could be making some improvements on the feet, but I don't think he's ever going to be like that great of a striker. He's got to get this fight to the ground because if he's on the feet, I think Gafurov's going to be too quick and too powerful for him. And he's been knocked out twice. So I'm actually going to lean towards Gafurov here. But if Gafurov is shooting sloppy takedowns like he did against Said Nurmagomedov, Wiklacz could definitely catch a submission here. Like when I saw this matchup, I had in my mind Said Nurmagomedov hitting that ninja choke on Gafurov and then I thought, if Gafurov shoots here, he's getting guillotine choked. Because we saw Wiklacz hit a bunch of guillotines on Patchy Mix. Did he submit him with them? No. But they were pretty freaking tight. They were very, very tight. And he used them to sweep as well. So you don't want to go on the ground with Wiklacz. But if Gafurov can stay on his feet, I think he's going to be the much better striker. I'll take Gafurov here for the early lean. But it could be like a Gafurov KO bet. Something like that. Or maybe the fight ends inside the distance. We'll see. But Gafurov for the early lean. Kong Wang taking on Eduardo Moura. Moura comes in as a plus 260 dog. Kong Wang sit at minus 310. Now, I think it's actually pronounced Wong Tong, but I'm not calling her that. I'm calling her Kong Wang because it's bang, bang, Wang gang all day. But in this matchup, I don't know. I do have my pause because I've always been a huge believer in Kong Wang. I think she's a very physical fighter for being a mainly striker. She's extremely athletic, but we don't really know what her ground game looks like. And that's what Eduardo Moura is going to bring. Like, she's not going to go out there and strike with Kong Wang. I'd be shocked if she does. Then she deserves to lose because she's not going to win a striking match. She could maybe hurt her. You know, we've seen Kong Wang get hurt with some shots against Gabriel Fernandez. And Fernandez is a solid striker, but a bit passive. And she just caught Kong Wang. And could Eduardo Moura do that on the feet? Yeah. But we're also in the smaller octagon in the Apex. If Eduardo Moura does get takedowns, what does Kong Wang's bottom game look like? I'm not confident in it. So if it's on the feet, I think Kong Wang, the longer the fight goes, is probably going to pull away with it because Eduardo Moura's cardio is pretty bad. I mean, she was getting worked by Lauren Murphy in round 3, like 50-year-old Lauren Murphy. She had to really pace herself to go 15 minutes against Veronica Hardy and win that fight. She completely gassed against Denise Gomes. That was down a weight class. But still, she didn't really show any significant improvements to her cardio when she moved up to 125. She's a big girl, though. I mean, at strawweight, it was like not fair at all. And at flyweight, she looks like she belongs in the weight class. She's not undersized at all. On the feet, Kong Wang's going to piece her up. She's going to piece her up. As long as she doesn't get hit with something big, she's going to be winning until she doesn't on the feet. If the fight hits the ground, that's where I have my question, but I'm just not really confident it hits the ground. And if it does hit the ground, okay, maybe she loses the first round. Then we go to round 2. Eduardo Moura's gas tank and overall offense tends to slow down. I think Kong Wang could probably take over from there. So I'll take Kong Wang for the early prediction. I do think she deserves to be a favorite here. Should it be this wide? I'm not sure. I'm going to have to watch some tape, but I'll take her. Bantamweight bout, Said Nurmagomedov taking on Javid Basharat. Basharat comes in at -145. Nurmagomedov +125. And I think this is a very solid matchup as well. Basharat, back-to-back losses. First one was a close decision to Ayman Zahabi, and then gets slept out cold. I think that was 11 months ago. I think his last fight was in March against Ricky Simone in round 1. One of the memes of the year because you just see him on the canvas with his eyes wide open, just slept. Said Nurmagomedov could do that to him. He could. But I don't know that he has like big power on the feet. It would have to be like some spinning back fist where he hurts him and then maybe like finds a club and sub type of thing. Hurts him, Basharat shoots a sloppy takedown, Said Nurmagomedov gets him in that ninja choke. That's literally Said's game, is hurt you on the feet early, force you to make a mistake, hit you with a submission, or hit you on the feet early and knock you out. He can win decisions at like a lower level, but I think his cardio is pretty bad, man. It's actually really bad, and it's looked worse as his career has gone on. He's 33 now, which isn't like super old, but he wasn't gassing that bad early on in his career. Vinicius Oliveira makes guys gas, so I kind of give him a pass there. But if you wrestle up Said Nurmagomedov, like the guy just does tend to slow down. Even Jonathan Martinez, there were some grappling scenarios. There was a lot of clinching in that fight too. He slowed down in round 3 and Martinez stole that fight. And then in his last one against Bryce Mitchell, his guillotine choke and his ninja choke doesn't really work after round 1 or early round 2. Basharat to me is Javid Basharat. We'll talk about his brother later, but Javid Basharat to me doesn't really hold a lot of danger in a fight. He's kind of a point kickboxing style that'll mix in some wrestling. I don't really love his wrestling. I think his brother's is a lot better because I just think he looks a little frail. Like I wish he would put on a little bit of muscle. Looks like he's just in the training room. It doesn't really look like he's hitting the weight room. It looks like he's just in the training room, drilling and sparring. He needs to hit like some weights, do some dynamic strength, explosiveness type of workouts. Because look at those shoulders, man. I mean, come on. Said Nurmagomedov's a skinny guy too, but at least he's got a little bit of width to those shoulders. Going into this one, I think it could be a nice buy low spot on Basharat because he's coming off the back-to-back losses. He was a very highly touted prospect. I think the longer the fight goes, Basharat probably is able to pull away. I know he has good cardio. But is it enough to negate the more damaging strikes from Said Nurmagomedov? I'm not quite sure. I'm going to lean towards Basharat here for the early prediction. This is definitely one I'm going to have to watch a lot of tape on, though. I'm going to have to watch a lot of tape on. And same could be said with Nurmagomedov because this is could be a nice buy low spot on him. He's facing a complete wrestler in Bryce Mitchell, has some moments in the fight, hurts Bryce Mitchell early. And then also coming off the guy that's in the main event, Vinicius Oliveira. So I'm going to have to watch a little bit more, but I'm going to lean towards Basharat here just because I trust his cardio a little bit more. So yeah, give me Basharat for the early prediction. Strawweight bout here. We got Bruna Brasil coming in as a minus 120 favorite, taking on Ketlin Souza coming in at minus 105. You're not going to believe it, boys, but this is a solid fight. I think this is a solid matchup. And I think I like the underdog here. I already played it. All transparency, I already played it. I like Ketlin Souza this week because Bruna Brasil's 3 wins in the UFC for one, I don't rate at all. I don't rate them one bit. And Ketlin Souza's on back-to-back losses, but they were split decisions, could have gone either way. And I look at this fight stylistically, Bruna Brasil struggles with girls that are like Ketlin Souza. Okay, she really does. Denise Gomes kind of fights like Ketlin Souza. Ketlin Souza is a Brazilian lesbian with a neck tat, for one. And then she's going to go in there and she's going to throw heavy hands. She's a solid striker. I think her ground game does need some work. But I did check out her Instagram. She's working with Amanda Hebos' team with Alexa Tainara. Now, Bruna Brasil actually has a win over Alexa Tainara, which is crazy, but that was a long time ago. And she needs to work on that grappling. Mainly her takedown defense, but also when she does get taken down, getting back up. So that is one thing that needs to improve with Souza, but I just don't really see Bruna Brasil taking advantage of that. Bruna Brasil is not some amazing wrestler. She's not some amazing grappler. She is big for the weight class, but she has tall woman defense that I think Ketlin Souza is going to be able to take advantage of and land more damage. On the feet, I like Souza here. If the fight does hit the mat, I don't think Bruna Brasil is going to be put in her way. And I don't really, I think Souza could make some real improvements coming into this fight. So I like Ketlin Souza. Bruna Brasil's wins are who is it? Shauna Bannon. Fucking Molly McCann and Shi Ming. They're bad. They're really bad. And Ketlin Souza's losses are very respectable. Karine Silva, Angela Hill, Piera Rodriguez, to me, I think is a top 10 fighter in the strawweight division. And she went to a split with her. She went to a split with Angela Hill. Give me Souza all day here as the underdog. She's my early pick. I did bet on her in all transparency. Welterweight bout. Alex Morono coming in at plus 385. Daniil Donchenko sits at minus 500. Alex Morono still doing the damn thing. He's 35 years of age, and he's 1-4 in his last 5. It has not been a great run for Alex Morono, but the thing is with Alex Morono, just when you think he's done, he'll come back and have a decent little performance. Coming off the KO loss to Carlos Leal, where I was honestly surprised that Alex Morono took that much punishment because Carlos Leal, to me, is kind of just a marauder, and he can mow you down, and he's got big power, and he's going to sit down on his punches. But Morono took a beating for as long as he could. And I think the thing that ultimately led to that KO was kind of like the mental fatigue, because he was taking shots, and he was kind of wobbling around, but he was staying in there. I mean, it looked like he was gassed out. He was just so tired of this guy being in his face that ultimately the ref had to step in because he wasn't fighting back. So it's not a great sign, but it's also like the stylistics of that fight do play a factor in him getting KO'd in the first round. But the thing is, like, Daniil Donchenko, I don't want to say has like a completely similar style to Carlos Leal, but if you look at his UFC debut, which was the Ultimate Fighter finale against Rodrigo Cezinando, you can actually see some pretty similar things between Daniil Donchenko and Carlos Leal. Two very physical guys that are good strikers, and they're going to sit down on their punches, and they're going to stay in your face. So if he does that to Alex Morono, he could easily, mow through him here. But he doesn't have 22 UFC fights like Alex Morono. So minus 500 is like, well, things could go wrong. If Daniil Donchenko, falls into a guillotine against Alex Morono, you never know what could happen. He could panic choke or panic tap. But Daniil's 24, does have 14 professional fights. I believe he's a main training partner of Rafael Fiziev, which after last Saturdays isn't a great thing, but it's a great thing for him, being that young and training with great sparring partners. So I think Donchenko is a guy that you got to watch out for in the welterweight division. I think they know what they're doing with this type of matchup. It's like, okay, you beat Alex Morono, we can move you forward into a more higher level matchup. But, they got to slow roll him a little bit. So let's hold our horses. But the fact that he's a finisher to me, I think is ultimately why he's minus 500. If this fight goes to decision, things could be weird because that means Alex Morono, hung around. But I think Donchenko probably does find a finish here. Give me Donchenko for the early pick. All right, before we get into the main card, I want to remind you, if you want all my bets, jump in the Home of Fight Picks premium membership. Use code HeyJive, get you a 5-day free trial. Over the last 3 years, we're positive 44.76 units in 2023, up over 100 in 2024, and positive 86.4 in 2025. And if you need to see my results over the last 2 weeks, here they are. I always like to be transparent with you. UFC 324, I couldn't recap in the early predictions because I've recorded it before, but we lost 1.26 units. UFC 325, we profited just a little bit, 0.96 units. So on the year, we're down 0.3 units. And I show you this because, one, I like to be transparent, but number two, I'm not trying to win every week. Of course, I want to win every week, but I know you're going to take some losses. And I also know you're not going to have huge weeks every week. So if you can scrape by with 0.96 units of profit, in a world where 99% of sports bettors lose, I will take it. I say this because if you're going to join this Home of Fight Picks premium membership to get all my bets, you should be joining for the long term. If you're just going to join for the week and expect to have an amazing week, don't join. Don't join. If you're going to get upset when we only profit at 0.96 units, don't join. Don't join. Okay? You're not going to go and put up 100 units in a full year based on winning 5 units every week. You're going to have swings. You're going to have weeks where you barely win anything. You're going to have weeks where you barely lose anything. You're going to have weeks where you win 10 plus units. You're going to have weeks where you lose 7 units, something like that. I don't think that was me. I think the biggest loss I had was 8 or 9 units last year. I don't know. But I say this because this is a long-term game. I know these first 2 weeks that we've had is not going to mean that much in the long term over the year because we get 42, is it 42? 42 cards per year. To go down 0.3 units in 2 of those 42 weeks isn't going to mean much over the long term, as you can see over the last 3 years. And not included in that total is the DFS long shots, up over 193 units last year alone on the long shots for a 205% ROI. If you don't believe me, those are all slips from last year. You can see them right there. But if you want all my bets, that's where you're going to get them. We go through these prediction videos every week, of course, because I like doing them. For 2, you guys probably want them. I always get DMs asking me about the fights. But if you want to know where I'm actually putting my money and how much money I'm putting on every bet, then you got to join the Home of Fight Picks premium membership to get that. Moving on to the main card. Light heavyweight bout to start us out. We got Dustin Jacoby coming in at minus 175. Julius Walker sitting at plus 150. I think it's a good matchup, man. I think it's a good matchup because Jacoby is obviously the veteran here. 16 UFC fights. And Julius Walker's the newcomer. 7-1 in his professional record. Jacoby has had, 31 professional MMA fights, but he's also had a ton of kickboxing fights. So he's the veteran here, taking on the young buck. And Jacoby's the favorite, which I do think should be, he should be a favorite. But he's 37. We know him to be like a point-style kickboxer, but he's 6-5 to the decision. 6-5 to the decision. I think the last time he won a decision was 4 or 5 years ago. And recently, he's kind of been KO or bust, and most likely, early KO or bust. So now we go to Julius Walker. What does Julius Walker like to do? Well, his UFC debut against Alonzo Menefield, he lost a close decision, which I thought was a very respectable performance for a guy that was, 6-0 at the time, took it on short notice. The guy's a great athlete. I think he was a basketball player in college. He's always going to be improving his skills, still relatively new to MMA. But I think he likes to grapple. And he should grapple in this fight because if he doesn't, he's probably going to get outboxed and outpointed by Dustin Jacoby and could get KO'd. But it's interesting because it's in the smaller cage. I think Julius Walker could probably get takedowns on Dustin Jacoby. And he's going to throw hands. He's not going in there just shooting takedowns. He's got a pretty long reach. I think he's athletic enough to land some shots on Dustin Jacoby that could hurt him. And we've seen Dustin Jacoby hurt on multiple occasions. He's 37 years old. I know that's not the end-all, be-all in the light heavyweight division, but I'm just saying I think this one could be interesting. I'm actually going to lean towards the younger guy here in Julius Walker. I think he's got the grappling upside. He's got the finishing upside here. And if he doesn't get hurt with something early against Dustin Jacoby, I haven't really seen Dustin Jacoby win a ton of rounds in the UFC as of late. So that leaves the opening for Julius Walker to steal those rounds with some takedowns, land some shots of his own. I kind of lean towards Julius Walker here. So I'm going to take him for the early pick. I'm going to have to watch some more film on this one, but I'll take a little leap with the early prediction on the younger, less experienced guy in Julius Walker as the underdog. Bantamweight bout, we got Gene Matsumoto coming in at plus 215 for Farid Basharat, sitting at minus 255. So we talked about Javid earlier. Let's go to his brother Farid Basharat. Still undefeated. And he's had some nice performances in the UFC, man. I really think the guy is, his wrestling is tough to deal with. That fight he had against Taylor Lapilus was very impressive. And it was so impressive to me that I thought he was going to mow through Chris Gutierrez, but he didn't really do that. So now we got to take a step back, right? I thought he was going to be able to take down Chris Gutierrez, who really doesn't have great takedown defense, is kind of weak on the feet, and I thought he was going to be able to take him down, maybe get a submission, or maybe just bully him on the ground. And he didn't really use his wrestling that much. So maybe somebody's in his ear, maybe it's his management, maybe it's the UFC saying, we can't have you just, rinsing guys on the mat and going to decision. We need you to actually, strike a little bit and put on some fun fights. Or maybe he just wanted to use that fight as some experience on the feet against a tricky kickboxer in Chris Gutierrez. Who knows? But Gene Matsumoto is 26 years of age, so he's very young, but he's got 18 professional fights. Only one loss in the UFC was to Rob Font, who at the time looked like he was on a decline, but had a great performance, I thought, against Gene Matsumoto. I think Gene Matsumoto had a good performance as well. It was a very close fight. Could have gone either way. Some people will say it was a robbery, and Gene Matsumoto should have won. But he also had a close fight against Miles Johns in a fight that I thought he would run away with. I thought he would run away with that fight against Miles Johns, and it was very competitive. And the thing that I notice in most of his fights is that he's very hittable. He's very hittable, but he has solid durability. He can keep up, with you landing on him, and sometimes, most of the times, he's going to land more than you do. He can also mix in some offensive wrestling. He's got good jiu-jitsu on the ground. But is that option going to be there against Farid Basharat in this fight? I'm not really sure that it's going to be, and I think that's why we see the odds the way they are. I don't know that Matsumoto should be this big of an underdog, though. Because is Basharat going to be able to take down Matsumoto? Most likely, yes. Most likely, yes. I mean, Dan Argueta took him down multiple times. And I think Basharat has good enough wrestling to take down most of the bantamweight division, but he's going to be able to take him down, but can he hold him down? Because Matsumoto's jiu-jitsu is solid. He creates scrambles, creates space, threatens with submissions, and he's going to make you work. So then you have to think if Basharat can hang in there for 15 minutes of doing that. Probably, but is it going to be as effective? This could end up being like a 29-28 either way. I do think it's probably going to be a 29-28 to Basharat. Maybe after I watch tape, I come to a stronger conclusion on, either why Basharat should be this big of a favorite or why Matsumoto shouldn't be this big of an underdog. But as I see it right now, I think it's going to be fairly close, 29-28, because I just don't really think Basharat's that great of a finisher. I don't think he's going to submit Matsumoto, and I think Matsumoto has solid enough cardio to keep himself in the fight and could, take over later as the fight goes on. So I'm going to take an early shot here on Matsumoto for the early pick, but the reason why I'm saying that is because I think it's going to be a close competitive fight at 29-28, and we're getting a plus 215 underdog. So that's why I'm saying it. You can roast me in the comments if you want to. Don't really care. But if you want to see who I would actually pick, my official picks will be out later in the week. Moving on, middleweight bout, we got Michał Oleksiejczuk coming in at minus 287, taking on Marc-Andre Barriault, sitting at plus 247. I didn't realize it till I was going through these I was making these graphics, but Barriault's 6-9 in the UFC, dude. That's a pretty bad record for a UFC fighter. But the thing is, for one, he's Canadian, so he's going to get more of a pass. For two, he does usually tend to put on some fun fights. Tough guy, gets into brawls, so they keep him around. But he's not winning a ton of fights. He's 35. His chin has not looked great, but he is coming off a decision loss to Nurmagomedov. But in my humble opinion, Nurmagomedov isn't a power puncher. He's not a power puncher. He's like a elite volume kickboxer with great footwork. And Barriault took the shots, he got hit with a bunch of jabs, was looking to cage push. So there's, moments where he's not getting hit. And Char is not really a guy that's going to sit down on his punches. Oleksiejczuk, 100% going to sit down on his punches, and he's not going to take a back step and fight off the back foot. He's coming front foot from the jump, hands high, pawing at you with his southpaw, his lead right hand in that southpaw stance, looking to knock you out with that left hand. And I think he probably knocks out Marc-Andre Barriault because I don't think his durability is there. I think Oleksiejczuk is kind of, improving his game, training with the Fighting Nerds, but also, to me, coming out and just doing what he does against guys like Dumas and Gerald Meerschaert. But obviously, this is a step up from them. Barriault's a much more capable striker than a Gerald Meerschaert. He's a much more respectable fighter and man than Cedric Dumas. But I do think the stylistics of the fight do tend to trend towards a Oleksiejczuk round 1 KO. If he doesn't get KO'd early, things could get interesting because that's when the power bar, Marc-Andre Barriault, tends to turn it on. And, Oleksiejczuk's been submitted 6 times, so maybe Barriault comes out here and gets a takedown early. Then things could get interesting. But I just don't really think that's going to happen. I'm going to take Oleksiejczuk here for the early pick. I think it's probably going to be a round 1 KO. I don't know. I don't think I would play his money line. Maybe try to take the round 1 KO prop. It's usually the way I go with Oleksiejczuk. But I think he probably gets it done here. Feature bout, heavyweight bout here. We got a Jailton Almeida coming in at minus 145. Rizvan Kuniev, the Rizzler, sitting at plus 125. I had a bet on Kuniev as a plus 200 dog against Curtis Blades by decision at plus 600. And I feel like I got robbed. Was it a close fight? Yes. But I felt like Kuniev did the more damage in the fight. I thought he deserved to get his hand raised, and Curtis Blades' body language was really bad. I was actually pretty shocked that he didn't get the decision because I think that was in Azerbaijan or something. Somewhere over there where Kuniev should have the advantage by the scorecards, but he didn't. So he's 0-1 in the UFC. Jailton Almeida 8-2, coming off the questionable decision to Volkov, where it was control over damage, and Volkov landed more damage, which was another fight that I think I had a bet on Volkov there. Yeah, I had a bet on Volkov there. It's actually on my Instagram. So we cashed in as a dog there. Rarely are you ever going to see Jailton Almeida as an underdog, so I understand why he's the favorite here. But it is a very interesting matchup because Curtis Blades is known as being like one of the best wrestlers in the heavyweight division, and he struggled heavily to get Kuniev down. Kuniev, one of these Dagestani guys who was in the PFL, actually beat Henan Fajeda, if you don't know anything about Rizvan Kuniev, but he beat Henan Fajeda in the PFL, and somewhere along the lines, he popped for every single steroid that you could imagine. And they overturned it. Yeah, that was the no contest. They overturned it. And then now he looks, look at this. Like, this doesn't look like a guy that's on PEDs. But if you saw him in PFL, I wish I could pull up a picture. I should have. If you saw him in PFL when he was on PEDs, he looked like a fucking freak athlete. This was him on the Contender Series. He knocked the guy out in round 1, gets the contract. But he doesn't look like he's on PEDs now. Could he be? Probably. But he doesn't look like he did with all the back knee he had in the PFL. I think stylistically here, Kuniev could give Almeida some real problems in the grappling, or at least in the wrestling. Jailton usually is able to take down whoever he wants. But can he do that for 3 rounds? Because I think Kuniev has solid cardio. I don't think Almeida has terrible cardio. But I think Kuniev's just he might be able to fucking stuff these takedowns. And there's a reason why I bet Kuniev against Curtis Blades, is because I thought he could stuff the takedowns. And I thought maybe he could get some takedowns of his own in that fight. And what happened, he stuffed most of the takedowns. It was a lot of cage push. There wasn't a ton going on, but Kuniev was landing some knees to the body. He was doing more damage throughout the fight. So I think a similar thing could happen here with him against Jailton Almeida. But the thing is with Jailton Almeida is he has a lot better jiu-jitsu than a Curtis Blades. Not as good as striking, but he has a lot better jiu-jitsu. So if Almeida does get him down and he gets to the back, could be the fight. But I think the secret's out on Jailton Almeida. It's like, okay, if he does take you down, stay safe. You're not going to get punched in the face. You're not going to get elbowed in the face. He might throw a couple shots here and there, but you're not going to get like drowned in a pool of your own blood against Jailton Almeida because he just doesn't do a lot of damage on the ground. So then you just, work your way up to the feet if you can. Don't give up your back. Watch your neck. And then if he's holding you up against the cage, like elbow the shit out of him like Curtis Blades did. I'm gonna take Kuniev here for the early pick. I'm gonna take him for the early pick. Maybe, I don't want it to be me chasing a bet that I thought I should have won against Curtis Blades. So, I'm not going to bet it at this moment. But I'm going to take him for the early pick because I think it's a very similar stylistic matchup. There are some little different intricacies, but a big advantage in this one is Almeida doesn't like to get hit. And Blades he can get hit, man. He can get hit. But if he can't take down Kuniev, or if Kuniev gets back up on the feet, I think Kuniev could knock him out. So give me Kuniev for the early prediction. Got to watch some more tape on this one, though, before I make any bets or come to a real conclusion. Co-main event, we got Amir Albazi taking on Kyoji Horguchi. Horguchi minus 350. Albazi plus 285. As I said earlier at the beginning of the show, Albazi coming off career worst performance, his first UFC loss against Brandon Moreno, which was a long time ago now. That was actually I want to say a month or maybe a couple weeks, 3-4 weeks after my daughter was born, because I specifically remember it was the first time I had left the house to watch the fights. And it was a terrible performance. So that was, a year and a half ago? About a year and a half. He's had a lot of health concerns, the neck, a lot of surgeries. So at 32 years of age, it doesn't seem like a big number, but the wear and tear he's had on his body with all these surgeries is definitely concerning. And considering he's coming off that terrible performance, I can understand why he's going to be a big dog here. And Kyoji's coming off a great performance against Tajiru Ulanbekov. He's 35 years of age, but come on. He's had 40 fights. So, a 35-year-old flyweight, for one, isn't good. But for two, he's had a ton of fights. But he didn't look his age at all against Tajiru Ulanbekov. Ulanbekov's not an easy fight for anybody. And he made it look easy. So I can understand why he's the favorite here. I think he's going to give Albazi a ton of problems in the striking because Albazi's so flat-footed that Horguchi, he's either in or he's out. He's very good at it. He's got good footwork, and when he does come in, he's accurate with his punches. He can grapple a little bit as well. I know he submitted Ulanbekov, but if you asked him if he was going to go in there and submit Ulanbekov before the fight, I'm sure he would probably say no. But it is improving, and he has been using it a little bit. So could he use it here against Albazi? Possibly. But Albazi's a pretty solid defensive wrestler. I don't really see it. I think he's probably just going to be able to outstrike him. But, the thing with Horguchi is he's also been, I don't want to say messed up, but he's been knocked around on the regional scene or in Ryzen before he came back to the UFC. So it's not like his chin is flawless. He's 35, but it's not like he has some granite chin. He has been knocked down around a little bit. So if Albazi can land some shots, things could get interesting, but I just think with Horguchi's style, he's not going to be able to land those shots because Horguchi's not going to be there. So give me Horguchi in the co-main event to get it done. And that brings us to the main event. Please hit the like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. We're on the road to 30,000 subscribers. It's free. It means a lot to me. I'm putting out hours of content for you guys here on the YouTube, so it'd be much appreciative if you just hit that button for me. Bantamweight main event. Mario Bautista comes in at minus 205. Vinicius Oliveira sits at plus 172. Vinicius Oliveira was a very interesting fighter to me when he came in and fought on the Contender Series because, one, he looks huge. He's super long, and he fights so awkward and so chaotic that it's always going to be an entertaining fight. He knocked the guy out on the Contender Series, comes in, faces Bernardo Sopai, and he's kind of getting worked. He's getting worked by Bernardo Sopai on the ground. And then Sopai starts to slow down. Sopai came in, I think he was on short notice. Sopai starts to slow down. Round 3, Vinicius Oliveira's swinging heavy. He's swinging so heavy that he's falling all over the place. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? What was it, 20, 30, 40 seconds left in the fight? He needs a finish. This might be a 10-8 round. It probably is a 10-8 round, so it might go to a draw. But if he wants to win this fight, he needs a finish. Hits him with the nastiest flying knee up against the cage and gets his first UFC victory. And then he goes in and fights Ricky Simón. Ricky Simón is a great wrestler, right? We know him to be a good wrestler. He's got power on the feet. Oliveira's been knocked out 3 times in his career. We just saw him struggle with the wrestling of Bernardo Sopai. And nothing, Ricky Simón had nothing for him. Oliveira was like a plus 200 dog in that fight, and Ricky Simón had nothing for him. Oliveira just kind of dominated him that fight. Hit him with a lot of leg kicks, used his length, and honestly just beat the brakes off of Ricky Simón, which was very eye-opening. Then he faces Said Nurmagomedov. Said Nurmagomedov can grapple, dangerous grappler, does have some sneaky KO upside early in a fight. You know, he's got those flashy kicks, spinning back fist, stuff like that. And that was a very competitive fight, but Oliveira just melted him. And then he faces Kyler Phillips. Kyler Phillips, another one of these dynamic strikers, kind of like Said Nurmagomedov early on the fight, super dynamic, head kicks, spinning kicks, big right hands. Oliveira is now the favorite against Kyler Phillips. And people are like, hold on. Hold your horses. All right, Kyler Phillips, been there, done that. Oliveira is a favorite over Kyler Phillips. Oliveira goes in there and does what he does. Fucking works him, drowns him, and beats him over the course of 3 rounds. And at the end of the fight, Oliveira's battling through the fatigue and just has way more in the tank than his opponent. So now here he is in a main event spot. I just laid out his entire UFC career off the top of the dome. Crazy. 4-0 in the UFC. He's plus 172 dog to Mario Bautista. How is he going to beat Mario Bautista? Is he going to melt Mario Bautista? I don't think so. I think Mario Bautista's cardio is up there. You know, like I would say second to Merab. I think Mario Bautista's cardio is insane. I think his pace is insane. I think if you go back and watch him versus Umar Nurmagomedov, there's very few fighters that are going to be able to make Umar work that much without settling at all on the ground. You know, they're going through these grappling scenarios. He's on the feet. He's trying to touch him. Umar's in on his hips. He's scrambling out. He gets taken down. He gets reversed. Bautista didn't look like he was slowing down at all. So now in a 5-round atmosphere, Bautista might be able to shine more than we've seen him in 3-round fights. And Vinicius Oliveira, for a guy that's been melting guys in 3-round fights, but battling through fatigue, maybe he's able to melt Mario Bautista over 5 rounds. But I don't really see it. I think Mario Bautista can deal with it. But that physicality of Oliveira, it tends to shock people. So it's a very interesting matchup. I think on the feet, Vinicius Oliveira is extremely reckless. But it works. It works. But we have seen him knocked out 3 times. So it works until he catches one on the chin. Is Mario Bautista a power puncher? No. Can Mario Bautista hurt you on the feet? Yeah. He knocked down Umar Nurmagomedov with a knee. So is he dangerous as well? Yes. Is Mario Bautista a good grappler? Yes. Is Vinicius Oliveira a good grappler? Well, we've seen him in some bad spots. We've seen him in bad spots against Nurmagomedov and not much of the fight. Against Bernardo Sopai, I think Mario Bautista could maybe use that ground game early on here to maybe try to zap the gas. Think of Vinicius Oliveira, because even in that fight against Sopai, it wasn't like Oliveira was just 100% in round 3 and just melted him with that. He was tired too, but he just battles through it. And I just don't see Bautista getting tired from Vinicius Oliveira in this fight. And I think Bautista is probably going to be able to avoid those big shots, work his striking on the feet, mix in some cage push, mix in some wrestling. And I think he's probably going to be able to win the fight. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if Oliveira catches him with something early. We've seen Mario Bautista knocked out by Trevin Jones. Got knocked out by Trevin Jones, man. Got knocked out by Trevin Jones. He's been submitted by Sanhagen back in the day, but that was early on in his career. I think he's made a lot of improvements. To me, Mario Bautista is one of the most underrated guys in the bantamweight division. I think he gets a W here. I think he's the rightful favorite. Fought better level of competition, more UFC experience. He's got elite cardio. He's got good wrestling, good striking. So give me Mario Bautista for the early pick here. Not sure it's going to change, but I'm not saying I'm going to bet, on Mario Bautista at minus 200 because Oliveira is that dangerous. And, he's been an underdog before and really, really shocked people. So Mario Bautista is the early pick. That's going to do it for the video. Appreciate you all for watching. Like the video for me before you go. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Stay tuned throughout the week for more content on the channel. Until next time, hey, Job Picks.